They pulled a dead woman out of a sealed well, and when they touched her skin, it was warmer than their own hands. But what would you do if the person your village buried 40 years ago was still breathing, still warm, and slowly opening her eyes? Here is the truth nobody wants to say out loud: the dead do not always stay dead. And in some villages, they come back with a message, a warning, or a punishment. By the end of this story, you will understand why some wells in West Africa are sealed forever, and why the elders say you must never call the name of a dead person after midnight. The well that should have been sealed, a 60-year-old man ran through the village screaming, and when the elders heard why, every single one of them went pale. What would you do if a sound crawled up from underground and followed you home, and you knew nothing living was down there? This is not just a village story. Every culture on earth has a place they do not go, a door they do not open, a name they do not say, because some things, once disturbed, cannot be put back. Stay with this story, because what Old Man Kofi heard that morning was only the beginning of something that would shake Nkawkaw village to its roots forever. Old Man Kofi was not a man who scared easily. He had lived 63 years in Nkawkaw village. He had buried his wife. He had buried 2 of his children. He had seen drought turn the earth to dust and watched floods swallow entire farms overnight. Fear was not something that lived easily in his chest, but that morning changed everything. He was walking his usual path, the one that cut past the old abandoned compound at the edge of the village. He walked it every single morning. He knew every stone, every root, every bend in that path. The sun was not fully up yet. The air was cool and gray. The birds had not started singing. Everything was the way it always was. Until he heard it, a sound, coming from below the ground. Long and low and hollow, like a moan trapped inside a bottle, rising up slowly from somewhere deep beneath the earth. Kofi stopped walking. His feet refused to move. His whole body went stiff. He stood there on that path and told himself it was the wind. He told himself it was an animal. He told himself there was a reasonable explanation for everything. Then the sound came again, closer this time. Like whatever was making it knew he was standing there. Kofi ran. 63 years old, and he ran like a boy being chased. He did not look back. He did not slow down. By the time he reached Elder Mensah's door, he was shaking so hard he could barely knock. The old compound, he said, gasping. The well. Something is alive in that well. Elder Mensah stared at him for a long time. His face did not show shock. It showed something worse than shock. It showed recognition. He said slowly, "Kofi, we sealed that well 40 years ago." And Kofi whispered back, "Then why is it open?" Everyone in Nkawkaw knew what happened to Nkawkaw. Or rather, everyone knew the version they were supposed to know. She was an old woman who lived alone in that compound 40 years ago. Quiet, kept to herself. People said she had a gift, or a curse, depending on who you asked. She knew when rain was coming before the clouds arrived. She knew the sex of unborn babies before any sign was showing. She would sit outside at night and speak softly to the empty air like someone invisible was sitting right beside her. The village feared what they could not explain. When 3 children fell sick one dry season and 2 of them died, the village needed someone to blame. Grief is like fire, it needs something to burn. And Nkawkaw, with her strange ways and her knowing eyes, was the one they chose. A group of men went to her compound one night. Nobody ever spoke about exactly what happened. The story that survived, the safe, clean story, was that she fell into the well by accident. They sealed it the next morning. They never spoke her name again. Until the seal cracked open on its own 40 years later, and something beneath it started making noise. Elder Mensah gathered 6 men before the sun was fully up. They walked to the compound in silence. Nobody spoke. Nobody joked. The weeds had grown waist-high. The mud walls had crumbled. The old mango tree had died long ago and stood now like a black skeleton with its arms reaching up toward the sky. And in the center of it all, the well. The great flat ceiling stone was cracked clean down the middle, pushed apart. From below, the men stood around it and nobody moved. Then the sound rose again, that long hollow moan. Drifting up from the dark like smoke from a dying fire. Elder Mensah knelt down, put his ear near the opening, listened. When he stood up, his face was unreadable. He looked at each man one by one. "Lower the rope," he said quietly. "Someone is down there." It took for men to pull her up. When her hands grabbed the edge of the well, hold hands, thin fingers curling over the stone, one of the younger men screamed and ran and did not stop until he reached his mother's house. The rest of them stayed. They laid her on the ground. Elder men pressed two fingers to her neck. He snatched his hand back like he had touched a coal. His voice dropped to almost nothing. She is warm. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Because every man there knew Nkawkaw had been dead for 40 years. And yet her chest was rising and falling, slow and steady, like she had simply been waiting. Then her eyes opened, completely white, and she smiled like she recognized every single face standing above her. What she said next will stop your heart. Part 2 is coming. If this story has your skin crawling right now, subscribe to Gotti's Folktale Lessons and turn on your notifications. Because you cannot afford to miss what happens when she opens her mouth.